Hey everyone, good afternoon. No, I don't know. I streamed a bit in Discord Noob the past few days. I don't always stream on Twitch, but I haven't streamed too much. Okay, so kind of going back and looking here, just to kind of clear things up, because this is super messy. Yeah, just a little bit tired. I haven't been getting a good sleep lately. So if we take a look at this just from a zone theory, okay, from 8-8 to 3-2. These fibs are a little bit off. I don't know why. This should be yellow. Okay, so if we look at this from a zone theory, and especially when looking at it from like zone to zone or channel to channel, so the goal for this week was to try holding off of 6-6-8-8. So far, we've been pretty successful in doing that. I don't know if you guys have noticed. And ideally, try avoiding heading back into the previous means, because that's where we could start getting some major volatility. So this is where volatility could become implied. We want to try sustaining core ranges, so basically coming back above this line here. I'm just putting this here so you guys can see it from a very base approach. I feel like that's always easier for some people. You guys can hear me, right? Because I had it muted before, but I took it off. So the idea has been that we're trying our best to basically avoid going back to a previous zone, because like when we did that back here, this is where some volatility came in. So, and we're trying to avoid going back to another channel, kind of like they slightly did back here, not by much, but by a tiny bit. So if you kind of look at this and this, you see how like there was like that slight breach back into the channel here. That's what we're trying to avoid, so that we can still leave odds of this upper channel here. Okay, so let's just turn off the volume. We'll take a look at this. Can you guys see this? Okay, hold on. I just have to double check my positions. Okay. So today's the flip date. The goal for this past week was that we tried opening at least above 6-7-2-1, 2-2, basically core ranges, like the green areas, because those can imply going back to core areas, which are basically, let me just remove all these alerts here. Hold on. It's basically moving back to this range in here above 6-6, basically to that 8-1. What was the goal for the 21st and 22nd, you guys? What was the goal as early as the 21st? Ideally by the 22nd. And we ended up doing this exactly overnight. We did stall. We hit this range yesterday and kind of stalled back in here. The goal is to try entering back into that previous all-time high zone above 6-7-8-8, 6-7-9-9. So we did get that slight tag yesterday after sustaining 6-6-9-4 back here. And on the weekly report, I did say that the goal was to hold 66-88, but ideally closer to 6-6-9-4, 6-6-9-7, 6-6-9-9. And I feel like them holding the line here on Monday and slightly breaking above 8-8 is kind of what helped us sustain the 66-88 today, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you guys? It's kind of like this little offset here. So they left about like 5 to 6 points in downside, okay? So this is what they left in downside, which really helped us because we need to avoid as much risk as possible here, especially in these zone areas. So, and then they were also successful in breaking the zone up here as early as the 21st, and they broke it just slightly, and I think these were some calculated ranges from that day too. We'll have to go back and double check, by like 1.5 to 1.75 or so. Like I think that was kind of like the range break that they broke up here. And when I went back and took a look at this, I realized that that was almost the same type of range that they held down here. So it's closer to like 1.75. Okay. I just want to show you guys this. And this break right here. Off 8.8 was 1.75. Do you guys see this? So we had a pretty good offset, I think. I do think that this really helped us sustain this downside range right here today. And I don't think that we would have been able to sustain that had they not given us that early break and also that sustainment, because we had about 5 points to work with, 5 to 6 points to work with. So here's the offsetting ranges here. We also had a good core open at 6779, I believe, which can help us also come back to these ranges here. Overnight session yesterday, the goal was to try testing 6688, which we did do. Initially, they had stalled back here right at 88, and then they ended up coming back to that 8875 and taking it back up there. Today's an important flip date for structure because it could be looked at as like a reset. Sorry, I have to focus on my XOM position because that's what I was trading today. XOM's actually getting a really good recovery here with volume. Oh wow, that's actually a really, really good recovery on XOM here. They brought it back. They held at 113.28. My target on this earlier was if it breaks at 114.55, that it could get 114.77 to 114.84, potentially get back to this extremely calculated spot around 115.33 for XOM. I might have to change my exit on that. This XOM is known to be a runner into the close too. On gold, I wanted to cover this one really quickly too, because I did want it to come back to a minimum of that 41.03 today. So after it basically, gold basically stalled my exact target to the near penny. It stalled by less than a point. Okay, so we were looking at a 4382.22 break. It stalled at 4,381.48. So, and we also had like this pretty big flip date that was coming up for the 22nd, and it couldn't break range ahead of that. So basically, to neutralize things, we just need it back in this area here. So back in that 4103, 4114, 4131. And I think if gold's able to make a really nice doji right here, we could see a good reversal back tomorrow. So we'll keep gold on watch, maybe for a potential retest if anyone's trading gold. And I'll kind of pull up where did my chart go for that? My secondary chart here, just so we can see. Yeah, it was a little bit far off. So on this chart here, there's like about an 83.9 differential between gold futures and the CFD chart. Oh wow, XOM is really getting some range breaks here, guys. 114.77 about to clear here on XOM. This was one of my favorite plays for today, especially on that really good stall and hold earlier this afternoon. And there was some really good liquidity that came in here off that calculated area. I don't know if you guys saw that. So this range in here on XOM around 114.20. Did you guys see this? This range right here? This is a calculated spot. Usually this area triggers back to all-time highs. So I would set alerts around that range because that's typically where this can get a lot of good volatility. just want to pull up my secondary chart on this too, just to kind of show you guys. So kind of like right back around here, 4103, 4112. This is the exact area we want to see this nesting back to today, just so at least we have, and they might do it in two parts. There might be some overhead around 4,228 first before they can come back and clear this range in here. But generally speaking, the 4382, 4405 is going to be a big spot on gold if anyone's been trading the commodity. On ES, I wanted to also point out too that before 12 o'clock here, I don't know if you guys were paying attention. Remember how I said we really needed to come back, sorry, before 1 and clear above 6744. They just couldn't do it. So this is kind of where they stalled. And notice I had some flips at 1230, 1232, 1236. They turned this back around and they held 6699. That's kind of what kept the zone in play. And then we came back right here. Okay, notice what they did here. This really stood out. Pay attention. Do you see that? 6732 close. Okay, off that 1259 stick, meaning top of the zone is around 673150, 6732. Channel is closer to like 33. So that implied that they might want to still retest the zone area. Back at 1 o'clock, they did the exact same thing. Okay, so back at 1 o'clock, they came back, did the same thing. Instead of coming back and closing this above, where's the 1259 stick? There's 1259, and then, where was it? 1159, this one right here, sorry. You see how they stalled the top of the channel right here at 4.8? Okay, that's the top of the channel. This is the bottom of the channel. This is the top of the zone. So basically what they did for that period is they imply that they're going to keep it zone bound, okay, from the duration of 1 till 2, which they did. And then between 2 to 3, I noticed that they came back and sustained the bottom of the zone here. I don't know if you guys were paying attention to this, but they held off like a neutral spot, which can at least give you a neutral odd of coming back to test where. What do you guys think? There's somewhere specific that they're going to test during this period here, specifically between now and imbalance prints. What's the big range? I cleared everything on the chart just to kind of keep this nice and clean. What's the area that you want to bring this back to, at least for the last half of the session? So between, like, let's say 3:30 to 4 o'clock. Okay, because this is basically the range that they couldn't quite close above, and they didn't close beneath. So it kind of kept this zone bound. Here's the back test of the zone. Where's the area that we want to come back and retest here to give us some better odds that we failed to do during a very crucial period back in here? 4.4, right? 67.44, 67.49. Back in here, they did take out during like the 11 to 12 session. They did try testing 6758 and then stalled. So that's going to be a bigger overhead there too. But yeah, we need a break over 4.4. Okay, 67.44 is extremely calculated. So is this 4.8 range. And they basically retested the bottom of the zone. They basically passed that. So it kind of helped odds stay in play. Sorry guys, XLM is really breaking, so I just want to make sure I get the best exits possible. Okay, is everyone on the same page? XOM getting some really good stick breaks to 115.16. I don't know if anyone jumped in on this trade, but I think it could easily trigger that 115.52. That's the area that we couldn't clear the last time when we traded XOM. I don't know if you guys remember on our last flip day, and look at this, today's the next flip. That's actually crazy. So we had a flip day on October 9th and October 22nd. October 9th was the last time that it came back and tried testing this area here. I know this chart's super messy, but just take a look. Let me just clear this up a bit. Do you see this? I'm just gonna clear it so you guys can see. And there's really big calculated ranges back around this area here, okay, where that yellow line is. Just kind of pay attention to this yellow line in here and this area in here. Do you guys see that? This is a clear trade. Okay, so especially off these ranges right here. Can you see this? I don't know who took this trade or who's trading it, but if XOM can close above this 115.52 today, this could easily get back to 118. And it stalled that exact 50% mark last time at 118.38, at 118.36. So I had some flip dates for the 9th and the 22nd. I think it's working basically in increments of 9 days or 8 days on XOM. I don't remember the exact measurement. I think it's, yeah, 9 bars or 13 days is what you could work with. So the earliest range that we could look for maybe for a potential retest here could be as late as the 4th, but potentially from low ranges as early as the 29th. So we could easily see some really good price movements on XOM here, but I just want to show you guys like how clean this looks. Do you see this? Especially on a 5-minute, like this structural hold off 113 is an easy break back to 115.52. So I just thought I'd share that one. Let me reset that. Okay, let me just set some alerts on this. 115, 22, 115, 46. Let's go back here. Yeah, I'd say it's more of the 4-4 stop. And plus also, I was going to tell you guys too, we don't necessarily have to, okay, I feel like some people get confused when there's flip dates, right? What does a flip date usually imply? Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go like up, down. It's kind of like a way to gauge future price action. So based on what happened on October 16th and 15th and where we closed, right? That implied that we would do what? What did that imply? Based on what they did on those structural dates. Well, you have to kind of gauge it from the existing dynamics and where you're currently trading, okay? And where you're stalling. So based on the 15th and 16th, okay, they couldn't clear exactly where we wanted them to, so we decided it's going to be sideways, okay? Sideways price action. Sideways, usually when you go sideways, you typically battle between one zone to another. Does that make sense? So I didn't like where they closed on the, I think it was the 15th. They closed a little too low at 6,713. Remember how we preferred that they closed closer to 6,720, 6,721, right? So today's, this week's weekly open could help reset that odd, okay? And today's another structural flip, which could also help us out a little bit. Do you guys see how this is now a reset so they can battle two zones between 67.88 and 66.88? Do you guys see this? This is a zone battle now, okay? Usually this happens when markets are trying to decide which direction they want to take next, okay? And we have some really good structural flips that can help us make that decision. And that was kind of the theme for the week that I put on the report, is we're going to probably see a bit of back and forth until as early as the 22nd, okay? So the 22nd flip date, it's not to be a directional flip. It's to gauge direction. Does that make sense? From now, from the 22nd through the 26th and potentially through month end. Does that make sense? Okay, based on what they did on the 15th and 16th, I could already tell that this was going to be sideways during the 16th through the 22nd. 22nd closing price, though, you can see it's a battle here. Like, it's pretty obvious they're trying to battle both ends, correct? Today's closing price could easily give us a good idea of what we can get from now till the 26th, or as early as the 26th. Yeah, exactly, because there's a lot of structural flips that flip around this time. So like, I think we had, so remember here, like we had the 16th. I didn't like this because I was like, oh, they couldn't close this high enough, okay, on the 15th. Do you remember this? Like, look, we didn't get that good close, but look, they reset it on the 20th. Do you see what I'm saying? The 20th opened above. So could that give us a good reset? Do you guys see what I'm saying? This was not ideal. This, where's the X that I usually use? This sucked, okay? But the 20th, this was a good open. This could help you reset odds, okay? Everyone's on the same page. What would we need to reset odds? So a lot of these, so you can see like the 20th was the 10-day flip. Okay, so does the 20th look a lot better in terms of structure here? And where they opened and closed? Yes, right? And this runs till November 3rd. It isn't an inside bar. Okay, so there that could be a little bit of an issue. But take a look at the 20th. So 20th opened above, closed above. Do you see what I'm saying? In terms of structure, okay? Does that make sense? So in terms of structure, the 20th opened above, closed above. It becomes very, very, very important that the 22nd starts giving a bit more of a defined direction, right? And then also within the 24th, because remember I said that the 23rd is the earliest we can engulf. So technically speaking, if we're able to meet our conditions, which is testing the zone, all-time high zone is 6788 to 6832. Last time we stalled the neutral zone. And we're able to hold this zone, 6688 held, okay, on the 22nd, which is a very important flip date. And we have odds to engulf as early as the 23rd, because this flips over on the 24th. Engulfing means taking out the full outside range. This is an outside potential candle, okay? And we met the condition of holding the zone and testing the upper zone. So we tested 6788, we held 6688. This is giving us a pretty decent odd of potentially engulfing tomorrow, correct? That's the earliest that we could do. So what's our job right now? What do we have to determine to see how high of a probability that's going to be? What do you guys think? And I don't want to get too distracted, guys, because I have a few positions open, but what do you guys think? And this is why earlier I was like, damn it, they stalled 5-8. 5-8 was a really important break. It's kind of the same conditions reset. But the 5-8 area is pretty huge. That would be like a 75% break right here. Okay, and this is kind of where they stalled just before noon. So I would say if they can get this back, even to the mean, 6758, 6764. Remember how I said that in Discord earlier? Do you see the correlation here? That's also a 75% odd of clearing the remaining 25%. So keeping it in the channel is okay, but if they can get it back to 6755, 6758, this would kind of help our 50% could just imply a continued delay until as late as November 3rd. So it just means that there could still be sideways, back and forth, like a battle kind of. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of inside bars that don't even flip over till the 3rd or the 30th, like even the 13-day, right? This doesn't flip till the 30th. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my voice. And then we have like this really nice flag on the 14-day, but it is still stuck in an inside range till potentially the 3rd, right? 15-day has been one of our annual charts that we've been using. This also runs till the 3rd. So we're just trying to determine basically if they actually can open up the window a little bit for between the 23rd, 24th, right? Or if they're going to keep this delayed. That's kind of the idea that we're working with here. Does that make sense? We also have a really, really nice flag on the on the 20-day that flipped over today, and this runs till November 17th. This could keep us basically in a potential bull range until mid-quarter, right? And November 17th would be OPEX week, I'm pretty sure. I'm not sure when the contracts switch over. I think that's not till December, but I'm sure that that's probably going to be OPEX week that week. And then using like our bigger structural patterns that we've been working with, like the 29-day, this is the 4th bar, this flips over on the 23rd. We've been using our 31-day a lot, which doesn't flip until the 12th. 32, 33 are also some annual ranges that don't flip till the 31st or 21st. And then this one here, again, runs till December 3rd. So it kind of could be like a, and I don't think many people would expect that, like to keep kind of going back and forth. Just like I didn't really think many people would expect us to be coming back to 6788. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like not many people anticipated that we would do that as early as this week. And that was kind of the goal that we had in mind. So based on what they did back here. What was I going to say? Oh, and also from like just a weekly perspective, we've also already kind of retracted back over like the 6-5 area. Basically, if we can get back to 6-7-6-6, that's going to be the best for odds. It's basically the weekly reports just recycled from a few weeks back. It's the same thing, right? And it's just going to help us determine our odds. Like from back in here, remember when they just couldn't get those proper structural closes back here, and then they couldn't get the proper clearances, and then they stalled 6-6, and then they closed at 5-7, and then they opened at 5-7. They couldn't open at 6-6. Do you see what I'm saying? We're just trying to see if we can basically reset these odds that we had back here in terms of where they open, where they closed, where they open, where they closed. This gave us the best odd when they finally opened above 6-6, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? But then they ended up stalling 9-9. Okay, we don't want to stall 9-9 next time. Then they stalled 05. We don't want to stall 05 next time. Then they stalled 12. We don't want to stall 12 next time. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, you have to kind of progressively, and this is very similar to what they did back at, this is very similar to what they did back, I think, in December of last year, back in here, where they had to keep kind of resetting until they finally were able to fix structure a little bit. Also, don't forget too that we're still holding within a 256 point range based on this week. Do you see this? So that's pretty good. Even though from lows they kind of broke this range in here, from an open close they haven't. Okay. So that's kind of what applies that pressure back around that 808.06 area, kind of like a neutral zone. And then from the existing lows, it's closer to like the 2.7 area. So it's basically seeing if we can try getting a core-to-core break. If they delay us, then I could just see us consolidating at core areas. Does that make sense, guys? Core areas would basically be the 70s and 80s. So these would be like core ranges up here, which isn't the worst case either if they just flip this back up tomorrow and then, I don't know, gave us like a sideways day or something on Friday, because then it would just keep us delayed until maybe the 27th, 30th, and there's the most odds on November 3rd, meaning it could still kind of go back and forth. The last time we had something happen like this, I think it was a total of 14 days. So that would make sense, because if they keep it stuck, it might be until month end. Okay? And I think that was this period here that I'm talking about. Until they finally kind of like took this back around. If they keep this channel bound today too, that's also okay. It's not the end of the world if they kept this channel bound. Did they stall 4-4 here? Yeah, they did. So I would say them stalling 4-4 during imbalance period is likely implying that they're keeping this stuck until the final 10 minutes. So let's see if they can give us some structural breaks here for the 4-8 and 50 period. 4-4 is definitely the overhead, and it's pretty obvious. You guys can see it, right? Okay, I'll let you guys digest that information. I want to double check some things on my end here. Okay. That's not my Tesla chart. Oh, Tesla's back at 438. Tesla's pretty straightforward. If like basically Tesla's just moving in like 31 point increments. So I know that the bigger range of support was closer to like this 423. I don't know if you see this. And even though they kept breaching below, they still closed above. You see on like Friday how it finally held above, it never breached that. This is fine. It just kind of has to come back over this 449 range in here. I think the calculated area on Tesla is 440. It's closer to this range in here. So up until then, it's probably going to, same thing as ES, maybe stay stuck sideways. It'll have more directional breaks once it can get back to this area in here. They report today after the bell, don't they? On Tesla? If aftermarket truck Joby. Yeah, we could do that. Okay, let's see here. I just wanted to see if they could trigger 6744 ahead of 350. Clearly they couldn't. So we'll see if they can trigger within the first 30 seconds of the 350 interval here. They did stall during imbalance prints, unfortunately. But they did get back over 3.8. So I feel like if they stall during this period, then this is likely going to pin in the channel, even though it would be a little bit better if they could pin it in the means. Apple's also back to that 258.20 into the close here too. So this is not a coincidence. This is a very calculated spot on Apple. If you guys haven't marked it already, you definitely should. These are pinnable spots for the close. Okay. Even 4744 wouldn't be an awful close for like, but that to me would imply that they want to keep it sideways. Whoever was asking earlier. I just wanted to see if this equates to breaking this area here or not. Yeah, it does. We'll have to see. XOM sometimes does ramp into the close, so we'll see. The final window here would be like that 5.4, 5.5. That's a typical standard rule that I have. Yeah, whatever. It's fine though. If you guys know the ranges that we're working with, and you can just purchase off that area and then buy time, right? And like I said this morning too, like don't overtrade sessions like this, because you have to kind of understand where there's areas of high risk, high reward, and also like overall range, I guess, on this session is not flat, but they kind of just want to neutralize things. Good afternoon. What do you guys think? Who here thinks that they can break 4744 during the 354 to 355 window? 6744 break. I'm only going to set that to minutes since we don't really have much time. I'll stick around for earnings today too. Yeah, because 6744 is an annual range, so this area is also, it's tied directly to those 256 and 346 points, so obviously breaking back over 4849 would be even better, but I don't want to close in the means if they're not going to close it high enough. Does that make sense? Like if they're not going to close this at 5.8 or 6.6, then I'd rather stay in the 40s. Does that make sense? Like you don't want to close at 5.2 if you can't close at 5.8. You'd rather close a bit lower just to kind of give you a better odd of breaking. It's kind of like taking a step back. Yeah, it depends on what kind of sticks they want to do. The USD CAD had a pretty big drop, obviously, with gold too. Gold is going exactly back to where I thought it would go back to end of day today. Crypto could see a nice recovery too. I didn't really talk about this one too much, but Apple's getting a nice move into the close. Crypto held a very important mark that I have, 106, 105. This is a very big spot for Bitcoin, and back to this 108 area. This is the spot that it essentially came back to the previous time before they had this nice ramp up back here. So they're kind of neutralizing it again too. So something else that we could maybe just keep an eye on. Apple getting a break of that 25820. Do you see what I mean? This is a really big spot for Apple in general, especially if you can get some mega cap tech names moving up ahead of like Tesla earnings. So let's see. They didn't tag 4.4 yet. I didn't get an alert. That means they're making this pinnable, guys. This is a pretty pinnable close. Well, thank you, Smos. Okay, let's see here. Let's see. I think the 1932 areas. What's 1941? You guys know what pinnable means, right? Like, think about it as like they know that they can't go beneath 3.2 and they know that they can't go above 4.8. Do you get what I'm saying? So they're going to kill as much time as they possibly can to keep this sideways just so they can pin the close. And the most probable area is probably close to this 4.4. Okay? I'm not saying I know everything, but I've done a lot of math to figure that this is probably the area that they want to take this to into the close. Especially on a hold of 8.8. Okay? Why won't this delete? What am I pressing? There we go. All right, let's see. Where do you guys think they're going to pin the close today? This should actually be 474425. What do you guys think? Give me a number. $44 right on the mark. Well, there's two things that they could do. If they don't clear above, like, if they're not even above 3839, I would say by the 5.8 mark, they have an ought to take it back to reset the weekly close too, because it is midweek, right? So midweek is typically aligned with weekly opening range. Does that make sense? Because you're kind of taking it back. So resetting the midweek would be 6721, 6722. Does that make sense? If they can't close closer to 4.4, I'd rather they take it back to 22. Okay? Just like if we can't close above 5.8, we'd rather close closer to 4.4. 5.6. No, I highly doubt we'll get 67.56 in the next minute. They could also maybe move some of this after the bell too, so. Let's watch this. 6732 retesting here. XOM also stalled here off that 115.16. I would like it to at least try closing over 114.70. They also might be saving this because of earnings after the bell too, so just keep that in mind. So based on this, they're probably going to do this on the 4 o'clock stick, would be my guess. NQ, I think we said NQ just needs back. It needs to kind of sustain this 25, 0, 10, 0, 12 area that we've talked about for the last few days. And then same sort of idea. It has to get back over that 68 point range, closer to like 25,075. Yeah, but you see how they waited till after real-time close. I could tell that they were going to do that because they basically took the range back down. If they didn't take it back down to 3.2, are you guys listening? Remember how I said they'd have to hold at least 3.8? Okay, because if they would have held 3.8, then they would have had at least a decent odd, okay, of getting back, let's say here off 3.8. Do you see this, guys? That would have given you exactly 6,744.25. Do you guys see what I'm saying? So 4.8 would have given you a pretty decent odd of getting that. So instead they recycled the range down by 6 points. Exact range actually is exactly this. Like if they would have held 3.8, like I said, at 258, instead of bringing this down, then they would have had a pretty decent odd of getting it there. Doesn't mean that they can't for after the bell. Obviously they can for the session close, but real-time session seemed pretty limited. We did get that 114.70 close on XOM, so I held my contracts on this one. I don't know if anyone cares, but I held the contracts on this just because even though it didn't get the full break, this could easily see continued clearance tomorrow back in these ranges here. So I'll keep that one on until probably Friday. I do think crypto could see a bit of a recovery, so where's Tesla? Tesla going back to our calculated ranges into the close. Do you see that? Do you see how perfect that is? Wow, Tesla actually went right back to 440.23 at 4. That's insane. Isn't that crazy, you guys? Write those on your charts. Those are math price points here on Tesla. 440.23, 440.53. That's definitely not a coincidence that they took it there at this point in time. So they'll probably clear 442. And I'd say that the areas on Tesla is basically, this needs to get back, like I said, to that 449 line, but ideally back to like 458, 461. Those would be some really good areas if they could take Tesla back to. ES, on the other hand, getting that 4744 break after the bell, kind of like we figure they might just do this after the close, especially if there's Tesla reporting. Who was asking about Tesla earlier? I don't know if that helped you at all, but anyway. I think gold came pretty close to where we said. Yes, it did. This is the exact area that I said we needed gold to come back to into the close. So gold is exactly where we want it to be for at least a 42.27 retest this week. Tesla getting a break. I think we said the support range on Tesla was this 423 range, right? To 426. So we'll see. If it holds mid-range close to like 432.86, then it probably has a better odd of retracting back upside. But I feel like they'll probably, since you see how they held this area in real time, they kind of saved it for after the bell in case they needed to use it. So kind of closer to like this range in here. This area right here. Okay. What was the name that you guys asked me to look at? Oh, Beyond Meat. I haven't looked at. Oh wow, I haven't looked. This is my chart on Beyond Meat, guys, from like 3 years ago. That's insane. That it tagged that 766, whatever that spot is. Wow, where did we get that from? We were using 20 bars on this? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4. Like this could easily flip over for its exhaustion period here on its 10-month and 11-month charts, which would be coming up now. That's actually a crazy spot for it to stall though. I haven't pulled this chart up in forever. No, I didn't. Oh, even that 890 mark. Maybe mark that on your charts then, guys, because this area is clearly the overhead. The 890. I would imagine that where it's hovering right here is probably half that range off that 890 spot. So this is about 25%. Yeah, it's like just beneath that. This thing probably needs back over. Hold on. At least 470 for even having an odd of that break. And a minimum of 334 from a closing perspective, and or 410. So those are crazy marks on that though, at this area here and this area here. I don't remember where I picked that up from, but it must have been something I charted way back. And Joby. I feel like Joby I had charted too. I don't remember on which template I had this one charted on. Because I do remember this one was a really nice cup and handle from a while back. And I think this one was, if I'm not mistaken, it was breaking out of like a, I think it was a, I don't remember if it was a 4-month, maybe it was this, or if, no, it was the 5-month. I don't know if you see that. Do you see this? And this is from like June, runs all the way till month end on this one. Typically when you use fibs, you can start measuring like if you're measuring this range here, you're going to measure off a open close high to low, okay? Usually you want to start with the midpoints, okay? So like mid supply right here, do you see that? Which would make it pretty obvious that there's some major midpoint overheads like back in this range in here, okay? And once you come back and clear this area here, then you'd clear here. Once you start breaking out of midpoint structures, okay, then you typically have odds to take out high structures. So that would be like taking out this range in here. So a high structure would be like this. Do you see that? This is the high. This is off highs. Are you guys paying attention? I'm giving you guys some really, really good insight on how to use fibs, okay? Do you see that? So once you kind of clear the lows, clear the mid-supply, then you have an odd of clearing highs. So the area that they basically stalled was 1708, 1724. Meaning when you come back to take this range out right here, okay, you're going to have to likely take it out. You might have to apply multiple fibs on here just to get like the full ranges, or just apply the levels on your charts to get the full range. Obviously full range would be taking it to 2. My general rule is usually when you break, you can break to 2.25, 2.75, but I just kind of want to show you guys what I mean. Kind of like back in here when they broke and then they stalled right here. And I think it'll make more sense if we just take all of this off, only include the high range, delete this. Do you see what I mean? So this is likely going to be the area that you're most likely targeting, okay, is around like 2146. Once you start getting some better structural breaks, okay, above this area here. And that you basically have until month end based on some of these structures. If you're looking at this from midpoint highs, this is probably going to hit that 75% mark. Do you see what I mean? Do you see it? And you likely have to sustain like this area in here. Usually when you stall like 1.75, sometimes you retract 0.75. Seems like they're kind of breaching just a tiny bit, not that much, but and that looks like it basically has till month end. But it seems like the target area is close to like that 21, 22 range. But you might have to apply multiple fibs. You know what I find helpful doing too is if you do that, okay, and you start using like the fib theory that I made up, you could just set them so that, okay, if you're measuring off lows, if you're measuring off mid supply, and then you're measuring off highs, mark the low fibs in red, okay, mark the mid supply in like yellow or something, and mark the upper like highs in green, so that you can understand like the way that it's structured and the way that it's moving. Does that make sense? Like you could mark the mid supply, like this fib right here, this area right here, mark this in yellow, let's say. Where is it? Oh, not this one here, hold on. This is off highs to highs, okay. You'd mark this in green, because this is off a high range. Okay. Just so you don't get confused. Do you see what I'm saying? If you're measuring off a low range, you could mark this in red. So let's say off like these lows, like these low supply ranges. Do you see what I'm saying? You could maybe mark these major areas in red. And you probably want to use similar fibs. Like, I don't really think you'd want to use something different, but you can see how like these are kind of like some mid-structural points in terms of like where it broke or clearing. And then if you want to mark the neutral ranges, so maybe off like a midpoint supply, this would be like this midpoint right here. Maybe mark those in yellow. And you can obviously play around with this a bit, but like kind of like this range in here is neutralized, which would make sense, I guess, if they have earnings coming up. Do you know what I mean? And you're basically looking to likely target like the 2.5, 2.75, since that's the range you're working with. And you could gauge this as like the time period that you have to do that by. So this is off like mid-supply right here. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why they're kind of stuck in like this little box range right here. Whereas if you're measuring off of actual highs, right, like this area in here, let's say. Let me just delete this. You can tell that 2150 area is going to be a really, really big overhead, like this range in here, just like this area was in here. Because basically, if you break a 75% odd, you have a chance of getting to your next 75% odd. Does that make sense? I usually like working in increments of like thirds or fourths, so that's just like a general rule that I made up because it makes it easier to have targets that way. Do you see that? So if you clear 75%, which would have been this, you have an odd to get to this 2.75 right here. Obviously the condition is going to be that you have to come back and open and close above here, open and close above here, right, to get those ranges in there. Let's take a peek here. I think ES is just going to be stuck in the channel with 4744 being a big overhead. Tesla, I think, is still holding above 427, so that's good. Went back to those calculated areas. Tesla basically needs back to that 439 to 441. Okay, I think I'm going to sign off, guys. I will see you guys tomorrow. I do plan on streaming tomorrow. I also want to ask you guys, do you guys want a midweek report for today, or do you want a late week report for tomorrow? I'm good with either or. We're basically just stuck channel bound right now, which I know doesn't really do like a whole lot for us, but I still think this week is so far sideways. And I think our weekly conditions have been really, really good from the report, if you guys read it. Because the goal for this week was pretty straightforward, honestly. And I didn't know what image that couldn't be found. I tried finding that for you guys and I couldn't find it. So let's just quickly recap this. So ideally open above here. We did that. Sustain the zone early on, closer to 6694. We did that. Retrace 67, 25, and 32. Bring us back to the channel. They did that. This could reduce range, especially if done by the 20th. October 22nd flip date means that we have some pressure applied for the 21st in terms of testing a minimum of 67, 66, 67, 71. We did that. Zone entry is this week is going to immensely help us reduce risk for Q4. So it's not just to like give us back all-time highs. It's to help us reduce risk from now until at least mid-quarter. And there's a lot of odds between November 17th through 22nd. So that makes total sense based on structure, okay? So we did that. Overall weekly support would be best if we can completely avoid breaking back to 6588 and ideally this time sustain this area here. So if we end up taking out 6688, this is going to be the next area that we're going to look for this week. Best case scenario is going to be to just try our best to sustain above 6666 and 6678. So far, we've done that in the event that the zone is taken out. So I think our weekly conditions were pretty straightforward, right? Like, I'm not going to lie, those were perfect. Okay, so now we're basically back, right back to 4744 for midweek. It just kind of keeps us neutralized. Like, it doesn't really give us upside odds. It doesn't really give us downside odds. It kind of just keeps us sideways, which is basically what we thought we would do, right? Like, we could still have a chance of staying sideways. So even though we had a good open, if we get the retest of 6788 as early as October 22nd and through month end, well, we could still be at some downside risk through the 15th, but based on the 15th, it can still more or less imply that we're just going to stay two directional and a little bit sideways in terms of price action. So I think this is pretty straightforward too. Like, if we fail this area here, they could break it back down to here. If we fail 6688, they could take it back to 6624, 6642. We want to basically avoid 6624 to 58 at this point now. This is what we did last week. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this is pretty straightforward. I don't really think that there's anything that's gonna really make a huge difference other than like headline risk. Today's big headline risk was obviously the data not being available. Okay, guys. Hopefully we get a 4744 close. We'll have to see here. Does anyone have any questions before I sign off, or are you guys good to go? And sorry for not streaming too much this week. I will definitely try streaming a bit more tomorrow and Friday. Yeah. No problem. Hopefully it at least helped you guys into the close. Defensives were strong though, so maybe just keep some of these names on watch. Like, I know Costco had a bit of a reversal, but some of these held up okay. Some of them reversed a loss, some of them held up decent. I still really like the look of crude right now. That's probably going to be the main sector I'm going to focus on. I did say to watch banks earlier this week, but crude was pretty strong today. This could be setting up for a continued reversal, and I think this is going to play a big role in how markets move this week too. We can maybe watch some China names, but I don't think I'm going to be taking on too many trades. Sometimes also just waiting and preserving capital is the best way to go. And I did say that this morning. Like, I said that we could have some decent trades here, but them tagging 4788 and then stalling and then failing to get back over 66 right here, this basically set the tone. Like, them stalling 64, I was like, and taking it to the channel and failing 4-4 on the first attempt, right? And then back in here, this is where we tried along to see if they take it back to 5-2, 5 and 6-4. And I did say that if they can't clear the means before 12, then they could easily come back and retest the bottom of the zone, which is 6688. And I did say that this morning. Otherwise, weekly lows at risk, and that's basically the 6888, 6694 retest, which they did do. And it's not really a big deal, honestly. Okay? Because if they don't negate during mid-session, that just implies that they take it back. So I think this was pretty straightforward. Like, I know it seems like a hard session, but it really wasn't that hard. This was a fail of 6-4. This was a sustainment of 3-2. This was a failure to come back and take out 5-8 and 6-4, okay? Which essentially basically just broke it down to the bottom of the zone. They sustained half of the zone here to reduce risk, because if they would have taken out 66.94 as early as 12:30, then we would have been at major risk. So what they did during mid-session is they sustained at 12:30, 12:32, 66.99 to try bringing it back to 4-4, failed 4-4. Do you get what I'm saying? Which basically the way you can think about this is this was pretty straightforward. Like what they did right here, you see how like they left 3 points here and about 8 points here? They did that intentionally so that they could like leave this range down here. Do you see what I mean? And I think that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of just so that they can keep recycling these ranges. Back and forth, and then they basically brought it back down to retest 8-8, held 8-8, which can take you right back to 4-4. It's just it's a non-stop rinse and repeat. You just have to kind of try understanding it from a market perspective, like why they'd stall 4-4 here, or 6-4 here, but then also failed 4-4, which implied that they didn't want to take it immediately down to 3-2, right? Because if they did, then that could have taken it immediately down to 9-8, 9-9. Do you get what I'm saying? And this was too early in the session. They didn't want to immediately stall the channel because then that would reduce risk of ever bringing it back to the channel, right? They didn't want to take out the zone right here immediately because it was mid-session and that could cause a lot of volatility, especially for mid-session, mid-week. That's a lot of risk. Hence, they held a neutral zone and then brought it back into the channel. Do you see how like the channel kind of plays as a defense mechanism? Do you guys understand that concept or no? And they did it every single time, just in time before an hourly flip. Typically when they do that, it's so that they can give odds during that period. So like I noticed here, and I'll repeat myself one more time, like when they stalled right at the top of the zone here at 12:59, I was like, oh shit, they're gonna keep this in the zone for this period. So the zone would be, this is the zone, okay? This area here, the colorful box. That's exactly what they did during that period, is it not? They kept it in the zone, right? And then just after 3, when they brought it back above a neutral spot, I don't know if you guys can see this. Do you see this? Look at what they did at 59. They brought it back above 6722. That's the core area. That's our weekly condition. They basically tried resetting weekly conditions for the last hour to do the same thing, bring it right back to the channel. Because this area just gives you an odd of resetting. So hopefully they can hold 6732 here. Overnight conditions, I would... Honestly, I would prefer that they avoid heading back beneath 67.18, 67.22 at this point. If they can even hold 3-2, that would be even better. But worst case scenario is if they did take out the zone range overnight, then we have our core areas here. But that's going to make it extremely hard to try getting back to 6788 by tomorrow afternoon. So I guess we'll have to see. Okay, let me reset my chart before I sign off, because I forgot that I cleared it for you guys. Okay. And Tesla's stalled the calculated areas but held 427. What is that? Okay. Okay, I'll catch you guys tomorrow.